So I just saw a report and I immediately thought I have to make a video about this. Again, being a massive Cleveland Cavaliers fan, I really do feel like there's definitely a ton going on with this team at the moment. Again, I've reported on this channel before in a couple videos, obviously, which go and check out if you haven't already. I did a whole video talking about the Shams article and what to expect from the Cleveland Cavaliers this offseason. And in that video, I do talk about that Jarrett Allen and Darius Garland could potentially be up for trade. Obviously, JB Bickerstaff got fired. Who could the next Cavaliers coach be? This and that. But another thing I mentioned is, obviously, pick 20 is available. And in my mock draft for the Cavaliers, I did have them going in a little bit of a different direction than what most, of course, had them going. And that's potentially drafting best available for most, this and that. But I actually saw a player that I thought really worked for the Cavaliers, and that actually happens to be Johnny Furphy, who is an elite shooter who can play the forward position out of Australia, playing for Kansas. Looked like just a really good fit to be a floor spacer and shooter for the Cavaliers, and hopefully replace George Niang, who just had a terrible season on the Cavaliers, and he literally might get moved because, yeah, it was a really weird season by George, deciding to bulk up on Kentucky Fried Chicken or McDonald's or something before the season started. Again, that's like a recurring meme now at this point. But one thing that's pretty interesting to note is we haven't actually seen any reports say that the Cavaliers are interested in any rookie or any player to draft, right? And this had me kind of thinking, hold on a second, they might legitimately trade this pick. But there is a new report coming out there right now that does say that the Cavs have interest in trading for Zach Edey, per We Are Cavs Nation. Again, who I think is like the podcast or something. I could be wrong. But these guys have reported on some stuff before and have been like pretty right. So it's definitely an interesting one to kind of talk about. And what's really interesting about Zach Edey is the fact that this man could go absolutely anywhere in the draft. Again, we got to remember that he literally helped take his team to the championship game where he played UConn, obviously, and pretty much dominated for the whole entire series. I thought with how this draft was going to go that a lot of teams would actually take a leap of faith on Zach Edey. Again, I heard like the reports coming out were really, really good. A lot of teams really love what they saw. You're pretty much looking at like a 7'4" guy who has Rudy Gobert written on him. And I know the hate for Rudy Gobert is out there by a lot of people, but I actually disagree. I've spoken about this on this channel before, that I actually think Rudy Gobert is a pretty good player, and he's not as offensively useless as what a lot of people make it out to be. And I think those are just people who haven't watched him play. Again, he's not great on offense, but he's not useless on offense. And the thing is, you're looking at like one of the best defenders, if not the best defender in the NBA. When we do look at it, right, it's like, well, yeah, it happened, but also he's done a lot of great defensive work all season and was like defensive player of the year. I think Zach Edey has a lot of him in him, even though, like, pause, it kind of sounds weird, but like, you guys know what I mean, right? The thing is as well that I am kind of thinking is, I thought this was going to be a situation where a team's like, look, we could maybe try and snatch a Rudy Gobert type of player legitimately right here. But then obviously what ended up happening is he hasn't really had the interest that a lot of people thought he might have had. He's fallen down from being a projected top 10 pick to kind of being in that realms of like, he could go anywhere from pick 11 to 25, which is so crazy to think. It's going to be interesting to see what team wants to take a flyer on him, because on draft night, some team might get to pick 11 and be like, look, we like what we see, let's take him. But then no other team is like kind of fully interested in him until like pick 20. And then if they don't take him, it's like no team's interested until pick 25. It's going to be that weird situation where it's going to come down to the fit of the team and the interest levels of the team. Reality is, Zach Edey kind of works for the Cavaliers, but in terms of he would work under JB Bickerstaff's game plan. Like, I think if you were to draft Zach Edey and put him in JB Bickerstaff's style and defensive system proficiency that he of course did have, Zach Edey would be a great pick for the Cavaliers. But at the time of making this video, look, it could very well get announced who the new coach is while making this video. But look, at the time, we don't know who the coach is going to be, and the realistic option is it's probably going to be an offensive coach. The reality is, if they're going to draft an offensive coach, that doesn't really make sense for Zach Edey. I think Zach Edey needs to go to a team where he's going to have a defensive coach who's going to be a bit slower in the game style. Again, the Cavaliers notably have been a slower team just because of how big they can be. Again, having obviously Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley share the court at the same time in previous seasons, having Robin Lopez as your backup center behind those guys doesn't exactly make you a quick team of any means. But yeah, Zach Edey, right now, if we're talking about JB Bickerstaff's game style, Zach Edey makes a lot of sense. But you just fired JB Bickerstaff, so maybe it kind of seems to me that this report may be nearly outdated, because I just can't see the Cavaliers looking at a dude like Zach Edey when you obviously are going to probably hire an offensive coach who's going to want to be a bit quicker, who's going to want to do a lot of things different. Again, there's no guarantees that Jarrett Allen is even on this team next season, meaning that the Cavaliers will need a backup. Is Zach Edey the backup? Like, could he be a solid backup still on a team who maybe wants to push the pace a little bit more next season? Because I've done my research now, and I legitimately think the reality is the Cavaliers are much more likely to trade Jarrett Allen than they are Darius Garland. I'm kind of saying that nearly as a fact. And look, let's not talk about contracts for a second, because I know trading Darius Garland would make more sense for the contracts due to the fact that if they re-sign Mitchell and then re-sign Mobley for the Supermax, you got 3 Supermax players, they can't happen. Whatever, right? If we're going to ignore that just for a second, the fact is, a good offensive coach could maybe get Garland and Mitchell to work together. Not just that, the trade value for Darius Garland is high, but isn't as high as what it would have been like last year or the year before. So the Cavaliers might want to sit on Darius Garland just for a little bit more, right? But Jarrett Allen, his trade value is at a high, and it's not going to go down, I don't think. It's not maybe as high as his all-star year, but also the fact is they were never going to trade him that year. That makes so much sense. Why would they? But it's at a high now, and the fact is you could legitimately bring in a really good role player or two and a first-round pick or two from a team like Charlotte any day of the week. This guy was so close to making the All-Star game again. Again, it's weird. It's weird to see how the Cavaliers are going to go about this, because there's going to need to be at least 4 to 5 changes probably in the offseason. They've already made the big one, which was the coach. The next one is probably, do you trade Garland or do you trade Allen? Third one, who do you draft? The fourth one is, do you re-sign Isaac Okoro? And the fifth one is, who do you move on from? Do you move on from Niang? Who do you try and get back in return for those players? And what do you do to go about this? There's a lot to talk about. Like, there is a lot to go over with this. And I think Zach Edey kind of makes sense for the Cavaliers. He made a lot more sense under JB Bickerstaff. But if you're moving on from Allen, if you're having Edey as a backup, I don't mind that. But if you don't move on from Allen, what's kind of the point of Zach Edey when you could just go out and re-sign Tristan Thompson again, kind of do a very similar job? Again, obviously Edey should hopefully be better, but you don't know. And Tristan Thompson really knows his role and was low-key really good for the Cavaliers last season. So there's a lot to talk about. Again, I don't really know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to draft Zach Edey. I think it's an okay decision. It would have been better under JB Bickerstaff though. Really interesting things to go over, but I would like to hear what you guys think about this all down below. Subscribe to my gaming channel and my IRL/vlogging channels. Links for them will be in the description down below. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.